time, I would like to begin part one of our Let's Talk Race and Cultural Diversity series. Tonight's speaker, Salo Ortiz, a licensed clinical social worker, has over 16 years of experience working with troubled youth and adults. As a bilingual therapist, he is able to provide services in both Spanish and English. Mr. Ortiz utilizes a broad array of approaches to treat the whole person, not just the problem. As a dynamic and engaging public speaker and activist, Mr. Ortiz has proven to be effective in working with resistant teens and adults seeking support in navigating challenges in their lives. The key to spark passion to any event while educating and encouraging growth and change. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Salo Ortiz. Welcome, Salo, and thanks for spending your evening with us.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm really appreciative of this opportunity, and I'm excited to share tonight. Here's what I know. Here's what I know for a fact, that, you guys that are on this webinar tonight would not have come on here to waste your time. It's a Thursday evening. You've got family activities. You've got work tomorrow. You've got a lot going on. And so we want to make sure that this is beneficial to you. We want to make sure that this is exciting after a long day. And I promise you that we'll engage you. But I also want you to know that we're being sensitive to a topic that's very heavy, that we're going to have some fun with, but also learn and really address stuff directly. So please join me in just strapping in your seatbelts and having some fun and knowing that we're going to get to the heart of what's going on. And we want to talk about unpacking our biases. And that's a heavy topic in and of itself. I know a lot of us come tonight with some biases that we are wondering, do we need to unpack that one? Are they going to talk about this one? Let's see. We're going to go through a lot of different things. I want you to understand, we're going to acknowledge that we all have a bias of some type and some sort. I definitely do. I'm a New Yorker. So let me tell you, New Yorkers just by default are biased against anybody else who ain't from New York. We only love New York, and we swear that New York is amazing. And if you're from Texas, it's the same thing. But then we're talking about the bias as it comes to race and culture, which is a lot heavier. And so we want to make sure that we directly go to that topic. We know that there's others that exist, but we want to talk tonight about that as we unpack a powerful series that this team has put together. We're going to learn about 3 types of learning, and seeing that learning is not just the learning in and of itself, but there's other ways to learn and things that we need to do with the learning. And then conceptualize stages of change. And this is something that we use a lot in therapy. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I work in substance abuse treatment and mental health. And one of the things that we talk about all the time is, what stage of change are you in to be willing to go to the next place in order to achieve change? And how does this relate to a cultural competency that we want to bring awareness to tonight? And then identify the practical steps we can take to address these biases that we have. But listen, we can't do any of that without really just setting it off with something that's just, I got to know this. And so I'm going to challenge you with something. What's the right way to do this? Listen, we've learned some things from our parents. Some of us, we talk to ourselves when we tie our shoes and we do the bunny ears. Others of us have learned that the bunny goes around the tree and through the hole. I need you to know right now, what is the right way to do this? Because there's a lot of strong opinions about this issue. So I need to know, what are you guys thinking? We often wonder, what do we do with this? And why am I asking you this? Look, if you have a strong opinion about how you tie your shoes, imagine how that comes when you're talking about, the choices your kids make about the person they're going to date, or even, race and issues that go along with race and culture when you're trying to participate in something that's outside your norm. But we're talking about tying shoes. And I'll tell you, those of us who go around the tree, we're some strong opinionated people. But you bunny ear people, you're out there right now and you're listening, you're giggling right now, wondering, why is this such a big issue? You need to know that you get some rights too. And you've got this bias probably because that's how you were taught on how to tie your shoes. And if you have children right now, you know that you're teaching them something here too. And your kids, whenever they try to go around the tree, but you're a bunny ear family, man, do you just feel some type of way about that? So imagine the opinion that exists with tying your shoes, and then what happens when we're talking about race and culture. Let's look at that. So here's what I know. When I do presentations, I like to go straight to the issue, and I want to know what happens. It's one thing when we look at bunny ears and around the tree for tying shoes. It's another thing when we look at a picture that talks about how we view young Black men. And let's be real, society has been going through some things. We can all agree on that over the last 8 months, over the last, the last few years. But I'll tell you, as a 43-year-old man of color, that this is more than just 8 months in George Floyd. This has been going on for a while. But what do you look at? What is bias? What are the biases that you hold when you look at somebody? And this really, really is important, because you'll see in this picture that the lenses that we use often impact, how we look at somebody. And so James Baldwin says something really interesting, right? A child cannot be taught by anyone who despises him. And a child cannot afford to be fooled. Listen, we've got to love our kids, and we've got to love this younger generation, but we've got to love ourselves and be able to be real with where we are. Child can't be taught by anyone whose demand essentially is that the child repudiate his experience, right? That they deny who they are and where they came from. They've got to know that matters, because it gives them sustenance, and how we look at somebody and how they grew up gives them a meaning. We've got to look at all aspects of that when we're talking about race, when we're talking about culture, when we're talking about the bias that we hold. So I want to challenge you, just really out the gate. What do you see? And what you see, or what you focus on in this picture, may give you some insight into some of the biases that you hold already. Be interesting to ask, if you're watching this webinar with somebody from a younger generation, what do they focus on versus what do you focus on? Be interesting to see. So I want to clarify some things that we're going to be talking about. You're going to be hearing a lot of words tonight, a lot of these words over and over. And I want to see what we think about bias, right? This term bias, a particular tendency, trend, or inclination, feeling, especially one that is preconceived and unreasoned. We're not talking about just, an opinion after you weighed in all the facts. It's a preconceived notion and an unreasoned opinion about something, an unreasoned sort of thinking pattern that we hold, unreasonably hostile feelings towards somebody or a social group, maybe a prejudice. And this is what we mean when we're talking about bias. What about privilege? Because we wrestle with this term privilege. And I'll tell you, again, over the last few months, the last couple of years, this term privilege has been used a lot, and a lot of people get really, really abrasive when they start talking about the right or immunity or benefit enjoyed by a particular person. Listen, we've got bias, and some of us just got privilege because we got privilege. Can we accept that there's a privilege because I have some rights that other restricted groups don't? And then the unearned and mostly unacknowledged societal advantage that a restricted group has. They didn't earn it, they just got it. And so if somebody just has it, maybe we need to talk about the impact that has on how we look at others. Then we look at terms like explicit and implicit. And both of these apply to bias. Both of these apply to privilege, right? Explicit, fully revealed, fully developed and formulated, right? This is something that is not hidden. This is outward. Explicit bias. I'm going to tell you right out front. And I'll tell you one of my biases, just to kind of lighten a little bit of this, is you guys can see that I have a perfectly shaped head and it's beautiful. And I'm biased against people who have long flowing hair. I don't hide it. I tell you, it bothers me because me and God made a deal and we took it early, right? But it's fully revealed and expressed without vagueness or implication. Look, I have hair dreams and I love hair, right? But it's developed and it's formulated because it's come over time. I haven't been this beautifully bald for a short while. So that's something light and that's something simple, okay? But then what about an implicit bias or an implicit privilege, capable of being understood from something else, though unexpressed, and then present, but not consciously held or recognized, right? This is just internal. This is something that I have and it's just there. And we understand that it just exists without even having to acknowledge it or note it. It just exists. We see these sort of things when we talk about implicit privilege that comes with being a male versus being a female, right? When implicit privilege that comes with being tall versus being short, right? For anybody who's married to somebody who's under 5'5" and they ask you to get something off the top shelf, there's an implicit privilege that you get to see what's up there while the little person, they don't. And they're upset about it. So those are light topics. But when we talk about bias and when we talk about privilege, we're talking about these terms and they have to be consistent. One thing I tell anybody that I speak to, all my clients in my clinical work, is that truth is truth, regardless of the setting. We will not use conditional truths. These words have to be consistent across any platform. And so explicit and implicit biases and privileges, just like the word bias and the word privilege, has to be consistent. It's not just as it relates to race, but as it relates to gender, as it relates to where you're from, as it relates to the school you go to, as it relates to what you like to eat for dinner, right? I mean, these things are consistent across the board. And so I want to make sure that we have a consistent foundation. I know that you guys will be coming up with questions. I welcome that. Along this time, we're going to have some times that we pause and answer some questions. Feel free to put some statements or questions in, and I'll make sure that we address as many of them as we can with the time we're given. But let's talk about our adult biases. Biases are normal. We said this. We all have a bias. We must understand how they are rooted in unreasoned preconceptions, like I said earlier when we were defining bias. It's unreasoned because sometimes it wasn't founded by us, but it was just taught to us by maybe an older generation. I'll tell you, I'm from New York. My parents are immigrants. They're Dominican, and they moved to Washington Heights in New York. Big up to Washington Heights, right? But one thing that you don't know, or you may not know about Washington Heights, is that there's a huge Dominican population and there's a huge Hasidic Jewish population. Both have rights to their place to live, right? That's their community, both. And there's this sort of tension that exists amongst these communities because there's these unreasoned preconceptions that one has about the other. And my mom being an immigrant, my dad being an immigrant, learned those from the people that were around them, the adults around them. And so when I was coming up in New York, we were told some things about those people. And some of us have heard that statement, right? Those people. We have a bias. It's normal. We've got to understand where it comes from. And we've got to, as adults, view the differences in the world and how they will impact our younger generations. I didn't think about how I looked at people until I started having kids. And then our younger generation's ability to learn and grow. And are we allowing our kids, which is what we want? If you guys are on this call and you're a family from the city of Chesapeake and you know you want to support your kids' education, you want to foster growth and learning. But are my biases getting in the way of my kids' ability to learn something? So how we model our ability to unlearn and then relearn is important. So as a good prophet, Ice Cube says, some of us need to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, right? Too many biases are bad for your health. Maybe that's what the remix needs to say in 2021 when we talk about this, right? But you better check yourself on some of your biases. So when do we start talking about this to our kids? You know, you may be tuning in, your kid's a preschooler. You may be tuning in, your kid's a senior in high school. Your kid's are 20-something years old. You may be tuning in and you've lived through so many presidencies and so many eras, right? When is it too young to talk about this? We got to wait for the quote unquote right time. I'm going to tell you at 0, and this is an interesting study that Elena shared with us. And it's something that's available to you on this PowerPoint, right? As well as some resources that you can go to talk about this more. But at 0, we know that babies start looking at skin color to see who matches them. They look at faces to see, do you look like my parents or the caregiver that I have, right? And then by 30 months, you see on this spectrum, they start using race to choose who they're going to play with. It's interesting because if you're 2.5 years old, you're starting to use race because it's something that was started to be exposed to you. So do we expose our kids to race? Do we notice it? Or do we say, nah, we don't have to address that right just yet? But then by 5 years old, Black and Latino kids show that there's no preference, while white kids in this study have started showing a preference to just kids of their complexion. It's scary. We can't stay quiet about it. We can't not address this issue. We can't say, hopefully they're going to learn this if I go to a diverse school or I live and move in a diverse neighborhood. We're having some of these conversations around the table and we're teaching our kids our ABCs, our 1, 2, 3s, and how they look at others from a different race or a different culture. And that starts from the beginning, starts from the jump. We cannot delay on some of this because that's what lays the foundation. So when we're talking about learning, we have to talk about not just learning in and of itself, right? The ability of getting and expressing new information. But when we talk about three forms of learning, we're talking about learning, unlearning, and relearning. And this is a process that we do without even thinking about it. You may have learned how to tie your shoes around the tree, and now you're a bunny ear person, and that's okay because you learned one way, you had to unlearn that way, and then learn a new way. So learning involves getting and expressing new information. This is critical because we learn some things about some races. We learn some things about what our judgments or what our opinions were about certain cultures, about certain people. But now, are we willing to unlearn? Are we willing to move away from this learning and then let go of it so that we could take on a different form of learning? We have to unlearn. You can't learn and then relearn something else over here and then say, well, I'm just going to see which one wins out. That's not how it goes. That's not how learning goes. We have to let go and take action about letting go of something that was not accurate or something that wasn't healthy. And then we have to relearn. We have to let go and identify a different way to do it. And in full disclosure, because this is what I do, and there's no filter after 6 o'clock, I was really, really smart as a young man and got really angry, and I punched the door because men like to hit things. If you have a kid in the house, he likes to punch holes and this and that. Some men just get angry and they punch at things. I'll explain it another time. But I am a left-handed person, right? And so I write with my left hand. Problem is, I decided to punch something that would not move with my left hand. So after surgery, after going through it, I had to unlearn how to write with my left hand, how to eat with my left hand, how to do things with my left hand, and relearn how to do it with my right hand. I'm telling you, I love being left-handed. I'm back to being my left-handed self. Before a season there, I had to give up what I had learned, unlearn it, so I could relearn how to do it with my right hand while I went through a healing process. Now, it's interesting because sometimes we learn something new and we try it out for a season. I'm challenging you that tonight. I want you to look at some of the beliefs you hold when it comes to race, when it comes to culture, when it comes to interacting with people who are different than you, and say, maybe for a little while, I can give up some of these beliefs that I have, unlearn it, relearn how to do something and see if this works. And then if it's not for me, then we go back to it. And I'm gonna tell you what, I love being left-handed. I'm back to my left hand. I love my left hand, right? But some things are more important than that. Look at the learning that you've done and figure out if the learning needs to be unlearned and then relearned in a better and a more healthy way. Alvin Toffler, who's big on learning and relearning, said the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write. That's not illiteracy, but those who are not willing, right, and cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Those kind of strong words. So I'm asking, are you illiterate? Are you choosing to be illiterate because you're unwilling to give up some of the things you learned for one reason or another, and then are being left behind because you're not willing to unlearn and then relearn something new that is healthy for what your kids need now and what society's calling for now? So, quick question. I want to know, what are some of the comments that are coming up? What are some of the thinking that's coming up? Because I'm telling you, we're just getting started. There's more. But I want to know, what are some of the opinions? What are some of the questions that you guys may have at this time? Eunice, Lisa, are there any questions that we may need to field at this time?
So
Now, we
I
didn't
think you're doing such a good job. Go ahead, Eunice. I think everybody wants you to keep going.
I think maybe they're just shocked and they're wondering what is going on right now, which is good. I'll take the silence because that tells me that you're thinking. And I want you to keep thinking. I want you to challenge. Listen, I am strong enough and confident enough to know that your ability to think and to process some of this and then to push back, push back. I'm not afraid of challenges. I'm not afraid of the hard questions. We can't be afraid of the hard things with a topic like this. We can't.
I
This
can,
is
I
number one versus a four-part series. So we need to ask this. Yeah, what's up, Eunice?
do have one statement. Someone says change is difficult in such an unpredictable world.
Mm-hmm. I love it. You know, I'm gonna tell you, I have some hidden plants in the webinar tonight because we are talking about change is difficult when things are so uncertain around us. What we do is we tend to, as human behavior, is just hold on to what we know. right? It's the devil we know versus the devil we don't know. How dare I change and try something new when some things are so unstable around me? Great statement. And I'm glad you said that because we're going to talk about change. Change is difficult. And let me be real, not everybody is in the same place of change. I'm glad we said that because I noticed that you're thinking and you're wanting to say, okay, there might be an interest to change, but how can I when there's so much unrest, when there's so much instability around me? I want you to ask yourself as I go through this. This is a process here that we identify in therapy from Prochaska and DeClemente. We use this mainly as substance abuse when we're talking about people who are willing to change their behavior. Something like substance abuse, if we've ever had anybody or known anybody that wrestles with it, with addiction and recovery, they got to be ready to change. You ain't changing them for them. It doesn't matter how nasty it is. It doesn't matter how debilitating it is. Change is difficult, but where are we on the change spectrum? Not everybody's the same. Ask yourselves this question, and you may want to take notes. This is where you grab a pad and a pen. This is where you grab your phone and start taking notes. What stage represents your current readiness to address your biases? What stage of change are you in? You are responsible to identify the stage you're in because then it shortens the conversation. This is not my job to tell you what stage you're in. You know your life. Tell me what stage you're in so that we can meet right there and then move you along. So your responsibility is to figure out what stage you're in. So I'm going to describe them. And then I want you to understand and I want you to kind of identify for yourself. Yes, I'm giving you homework. Sorry, your kids ain't the only ones that get homework tonight. But what's your homework? Well, your homework is what is necessary for you to move to the next stage? What do you need to do? So pre-contemplation in the stage of change model that we use in therapy, right? Pre, before, contemplate, think. This is before I even thought it was a problem. I'm not doing any changing. I don't care what you say. My great, 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 great granddaddy gave me these beliefs about these people, and I ain't giving it up. And okay, I'm glad you told me so. At least I know how to meet you there. And I'm not trying to make you do all these other things, but I'm glad you're here too, because you're willing to listen where everybody else is. Pre-contemplation says, before I even thought this was a problem, and maybe you come into this webinar, you didn't think that some of your beliefs were a problem until we started talking about it, until you looked at that picture that we had. So before I thought it was a problem, now we move to contemplation. I think it's a problem, right? Contemplate still means to think. I think I may have a problem. I ain't changing nothing, but I think I might have a problem. And so my challenge, if you tell me you're contemplating and you're just thinking that maybe some of the things that you learned and some of the things that you're teaching your children and the younger generation may be a little off, I'm gonna give you some things to think about, right? Lisa, Leunis, and Elena have amazing resources that make you think. And I'm not saying you have to change right away. I'm just saying you have to have some things to think about to see if it's worth it to change. So then we move from contemplation to preparation. And I call preparation the Hampton Roads hurricane readiness stage. I should take a survey to see who has a hurricane preparedness bag. Because I'm gonna tell you, I've been living here over 20 years and I don't have a bag ready for a hurricane. And Lord knows we have a hurricane every year. But preparation is on a spectrum that says I'm ready to change. We will not change. Nobody will change until they are good and ready. And that state is different for each person. It's different for each family. Do you have the tools necessary to change? And so when we identify this preparation, maybe a lot of us that are on this webinar tonight are saying, yo, I'm ready to change. I just need more resources to know that it's worth it. And so if you're there, I'm glad you're there. Get ready. Move along the spectrum of preparation, and then let's go to action. Action is what I call the Nike phase. Just do it, right? Now we know that action and just do it means that just because you dress up like a basketball player and all Nike gear don't mean you know how to play ball. Some of us are doing action and we're taking a step here and there, but we're still messing up. But some of us have moved through action and we're taking more and more positive, appropriate steps and learning how to do this thing of change. And we've got the tools, and it's a spectrum as well. Action does not look the same for everybody. Your ability to just sign on to this webinar may have been an action step for you that may go against some of the old beliefs and biases that we had. So now let's move you along through these actions and know that it's worth it to keep acting so that we can go to a place of maintenance. Maintenance is what I call cruise control. Nobody sets their cruise control on Virginia Beach Boulevard. And if you do, good luck. Because what we notice is that on the boulevard, or if you're on 264, or if you're on even 64 heading, through the peninsula, we know that you can't set the cruise control at certain times of the day because there's no clear road. Maintenance is doing something and doing it consistently, steadily. But even in maintenance stage, where we want you to be, you have to keep checking. You have to be heads up. You can't close your eyes and take your hands off the wheel. Whether you drive a Tesla or you drive a hoopty, for all those old heads in my crowd here. Some of us had a hoopty. Some of us still got a hoopty. You ain't taking your hands off that wheel. You have to maintain your speed and maintain your progress and still stay aware of what's going on around you. So you're right. For the person who wrote that in, it's hard to change when there's so much instability around me. So maybe some of the work we do is say, this is where I am, but I need it to be more stable. So here's the tools that I need to get ready for the change. Great statement. What stage are you in? This is your homework. We're going to pause again towards the end here, but I want to know what stage you're in. I want to know where you are with this. Really, really important. Because if we don't check this process, what happens in recovery when we're talking about substance use is the same thing that happens with change, right? Same thing that happened from me moving and using my left hand to using my right is that I found that this change wasn't necessary. I could have stayed a right-handed person. I was born left-handed and I could have stayed right-handed, but it wasn't worth it. And so I relapsed. And I fell back into old patterns of behavior. And I started using my left hand again as soon as I was able to. And I'll tell you, the first few times wasn't worth it. And then I started getting back to right, and as sloppy as most of us lefties do, because I found that I didn't want to hold this change. So listen, it's okay. But what we understand is that relapse happens because we fall back into old patterns. We want to make a change that's necessary for the biases and the judgments that we have against people that are unreasoned biases that we have about people of color, other cultures that are different than us, people of non-color if we're somebody of color, right? Because I'm gonna tell you, I have some biases myself and I have to let go of some of them because they weren't healthy, and I have to be willing to change if I want to grow. Very, very key. So now I'm gonna pair it with something that my folks in this education department taught me. And Vernita Mayfield has been doing some work in this. And she has a book here. You see the cover of it. And I know, listen, don't get twisted because it says 56 exercises for educators. Parents, adults, caregivers, you are the number one educator in your kid's life. Number one. They may go to school for 7 hours. They may do all this homework. They may want to be this and that when they grow up, but they look at you as the number one person that's influencing them. And they need to know that you're working on this continuum, this cultural competency continuum. And here's what we're going to talk about, because then we're going to put them all together. Awaken and assess is what Miss Mayfield says. We have to awaken and assess where we are. Awaken this desire, this need to really address some of the cultural beliefs that we have and how we've been socialized when it comes to some of these beliefs. And then we have to learn to recognize and assess how this has impacted us, how this has impacted our decision-making. Then we have to apply and act. Educators, parents, actively work to examine and dismantle inequitable practices, right? We have to apply what we've got awareness to and assessment on and awaken to, and we have to act on it. We have to consistently act. See, an act once or twice doesn't do anything. There's something that says the need for consistency is key. Just because you tell your kids clean their room and they cleaned it once and now they want $100 every time they go to their room, come on, I want to see this consistently. I'm trying to make you somebody. So we have to know culturally, we have some beliefs. Can we act on these things that we've been awakened to and see that we have to act regularly? And then analyze and align ourselves to things that are healthy. The activities, exercises, and readings that we have the ability to analyze the long-term influence we have. So can you analyze that your change will then positively impact your kids and the younger generations and the things that you interact with? And then align the money, align the strengths, align your resources to the things that are healthy and growing when it comes to cultural competency. And then we move to advocating and leading. We have to advocate. We have to actively and publicly speak out to dismantle some of the beliefs that are held. Look, this is what this team is doing. They took me as the intro hitter, and then they've got 3 other parts of this to really address issues because they are advocating for the need for change. And I'll tell you what, we look around us and we see so much instability, and we know we have to advocate for something different. I don't care if you blue or red. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. I don't care. I know that we are in some unstable times and we have to advocate for a healthy unity for some things because we need to work together. That's what this team is doing. So we advocate and then they lead the way. Can we provide leadership for those who are willing to learn how to do this? We can teach people up to where we are. So for as much as you know, even if you say, man, I don't know so much, it's the first time I've learned it, we have to provide leadership. And we have to use the language that we know. Okay, so when I tell you check yourself before you wreck yourself, when I talk about hip hop terms, it's because that's a language that I know, and it rejects the privileges, it rejects the biases that some other people may have. So let's put it side by side, because we talked about stages of change. What stage are you in, and how do you get to the next stage? And we talked about cultural competency in this continuum that Ms. Mayfield pointed out. And I wanted to show you that they go hand in hand. Pre-contemplation and contemplation. To think that it was a problem, or before I even thought it was a problem, we have to be able to come to a place of awakening and assessing, where are we? That's how it comes when we're talking about cultural competency. Awaken, meaning, man, I'm more aware of the opinions and the biases that I have than I thought were actually there. And I think this might be a problem. And then we start assessing, how much of a problem is this? How much is this influencing my kids, my community, my family? And then we go from preparation, pairing up with applying and acting, right? You can't apply and act until you know what you're applying. Get the tools you need to apply it and then act on it. You may do it wrong the first few times. The fact that you're willing to is huge. If you're still on this call, it is now 7:03 and we're more than halfway through and you're still here on a Thursday night. Yes, it's taking up some of your time, but you know that it's necessary. So we apply it a little by little and we act on it where we can. You challenge yourself to act wherever possible. So good for you for staying on board. Good for you for wanting to learn this. And then we go to action, right? And we talk about acting like we did with preparation. We have to use the tools and act until we know that we're doing it right, to the point that we get to maintenance. And in maintenance, right, our cruise control. We check and make sure that our vehicle is running right. We check and make sure that the tools that we're using are accurate, and we analyze and align ourselves with things that are appropriate and healthy and good. Listen, how does this look? We have to align ourselves with healthy environments where our kids can learn something different than maybe we had learned. We have to analyze, is it worth them learning something different? And it is. I'm a 43-year-old Dominican man from New York, and my kids were born in Virginia Beach. And when George Floyd went down in June, I talked to my kids, and I had to analyze how they looked at things when that was going on versus how I grew up and what I was seeing through my years. Analyze and align myself with things that were still necessary for them to grow, still necessary for them to learn some new outlooks, rather than holding on to the biases that I have and the teachings that I was given or that I acquired, because it wasn't effective. It wasn't healthy for where they are. We got to analyze some of the beliefs we have. Because if not, then we talk about relapse, right? We talked about going through these stages of change and then falling back to old patterns of behavior and relapse. And for relapse, what that looks like with cultural competency is recognizing that some people need leadership and they may not know how to get out of this rut that they're in. I want to do different. I want to believe different, but I need help. And so we advocate for those who don't have a voice. We advocate for those who need help, and we lead them towards this. If you got something out of this tonight, after it's all said and done, there's still part 2, 3, and 4. Bring them on. Lead them here. Sit with them. Grab your coffee, grab whatever, eat dinner early, right? Grab dinner and eat together while you watch this. I can't see your face. It's cool. But you lead them to how to learn how to do this. We have to work together. So let me put it this way, because this is more in my language, right? What do we do with this? How do we figure out, right? We have to recognize that there's a domino effect to the things that you're becoming aware of right now. There's a realization that says, wow, I thought they were going to go somewhere. Now I realize they're hitting some truths that I need. And then because I'm aware of this truth, right, there's this domino effect that says maybe this truth impacts some of the other truths that I have to see. Are they true or not? Are they accurate or not? And we see this sort of domino effect. If you knock down one domino in a long line, we start knocking down some of the other beliefs we have because we're willing to face them head on and challenge them. So there's this domino effect realization that happens. So then there's a reality confirmation, right? Human behavior needs to be confirmed. right? We have kids. We've watched our kids learn how to learn and walk and talk, and they look back and say, am I doing this right? And it's the same sort of thing. Find somebody. If you don't like what I'm saying, if you really want to argue with what I'm saying, challenge it and find somebody and say, hey, are these beliefs true? And find somebody else who can confirm this information. Don't just take it because I'm me and I'm good looking and, smooth talking, but because I'm also intelligent and because I'm telling you this is something that I applied, and this is why we share our personal experiences. So you recognize something, you take on this belief and say, hey, I think I need to change this, and you find somebody who needs to confirm that for you in your life. And then this realization reflection, right? We start reflecting and saying, man, I just found out on January 21st that this stuff was a problem, and I just realized this. What if I would have learned this before? That's where it's important to reflect with your kids or with the younger generation. See, our biases as adults and as parents so deeply impact the kids that we have that maybe for some of us, we say, man, it's too late for me, and I don't believe in that, but you may hold that belief. But you start reflecting and saying, man, if I shoulda, woulda, coulda. But now have that conversation with your kids to see and make sure that they don't make some of the same mistakes we did, right? And that's what we all say as adults. If I knew then what I know now, if you can learn from my mistakes, we've said these things. So now you get to reflect and you get to realize some things. Or, in the wise words of the prophet, notorious B.I.G., if you don't know, now you know. I know you're not as many hip hop lovers as I am. So I'm gonna put it this way for you. If you don't know who the notorious B.I.G. is, the king, let's say it this way. And if you were previously unaware, you are aware now.
Salo, I think we have some questions for you. I'm going to yield
Yeah.
to Eunice if now's a good time to pause.
Definitely. Let's go. Let me hear it.
We're getting some really positive responses here, but we do have some questions. The first one is, how do you account for bias that is based upon spiritual belief or are faith-based?
Spiritually and faith-based beliefs and biases are difficult to address because people are scared to talk about religion and strong held beliefs. But I'm gonna tell you, any solid belief system, any solid, and I'm not taking it from just a Christian belief or any other belief, is strong enough and willing enough to be put up and challenged. Test it in your real world and test it in your day-to-day. And I'll tell you that these beliefs we have are still our beliefs, and I understand that, and we learn these things, but see how applicable they are to your world today. And that belief system will hold water for whatever it is your belief system is. So I'm not afraid to say that I have some strong religious beliefs. I am a very spiritual man. And I tell my kids and I tell myself I need to test those things out in the community as well to see if it's applicable, to see if it's healthy for my growth and development, for the growth and development of my children, the growth and development of a belief system that I want to keep going. See if the belief system can't hold water in these current times when it's challenged, how is it going to keep going? It's going to die in the water by itself. So I tell you to test it. Don't be afraid of that. Be willing to, because then it's going to either reinforce these beliefs you have and they're necessary to hold on to, or you're going to need to change them.
Okay. Going back to your stages slide, what suggestions can you give to a person that is in the action stage of making changes to stay on course or not fall back to the old thinking patterns?
Yeah, great question. Right. If we talk about it being the action stage, right? We talk about Nike. You may not like Nike, you like Adidas. I don't care. Right. Nike said just do it. Right. We understand that we have to practice what we're doing. Right. If you want to learn a skill, you got to act on it. You can't just dress the part and then you have to practice. But it's not practice makes perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And so you take this action that is working and you found that it worked and it's worth using, and you consistently apply it. What we say in therapy is 1 to 3 months. Apply it and put yourself in situations where you can apply this action step that you're taking. Because again, when it's tested and challenged, it will hold water and you'll say, okay, this is worth it. What else can I find? Put yourself also with somebody, if you're in action or if you're in any one of these stages that's in the stage ahead of you. If you know somebody who's been doing this the right way for a while, get alongside them. We need to work with each other. Each one reach one, right? And we need to learn from other people. So watch the person that's been doing it so good for a while and just study under them. This is the idea that's in the movie Pursuit of Happiness, where Will Smith says, hey, what do you do and how do you do it? And I got to learn how you do this. So you come alongside and you partner with somebody. Great question.
Well, there's a teacher that's on tonight, and she wants to know how she can talk to her kids about biases without making waves.
Ooh, that's a challenge. Here's the truth. I may not be the right one to talk to because guess what? Sometimes waves are necessary. Some of us who live here in Virginia Beach love going to the bay because there's no waves and we could just sit there on our little floaty and not do nothing. But for the kids, they don't mind the waves. The kids want to go to the ocean front because the waves are huge and you get so scared because the waves scare us. They need the waves. I challenge you to make some of the waves because the waves are necessary. We can't change when we're comfortable. We have to be uncomfortable. I know that I've made some of you guys uncomfortable to the point that you're asking questions. Make a little bit of waves. Now you decide which waves to make. Don't go and say, well, Salo told me to do this and now you ain't got a job. I want you to make the waves that are healthy and appropriate and necessary, but change does not happen without being uncomfortable. So we have to make a wave. I encourage you to make a wave, appropriate, healthy waves that are necessary. Change doesn't happen without the waves.
Okay, and I'm going to leave you with a statement, which is a realization that someone has made tonight. And she says that this session is great. And she also says, I'm a Black woman, and I still have to be aware of the glasses I use to see the world, evaluate the biases I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate that to the comment who said that because I want us to really reflect with us. We can't make change and cause change in other people. I can't force you to change, but I got to look at myself. I've got to practice what I preach. I got to look at how I stand in some of these beliefs and some of these things as well. And I encourage you to look at yourself. So good of you, and thank you for sharing that you're willing to look at some of the beliefs you have, because this is not just a white problem. Let me be real about this. This ain't just for white folk. This ain't just for Southerners. This ain't just for, those people. What's it doing to you? Can you challenge the things that you have and the beliefs you have?
I just got another question. How do you handle the action stage when you want to expand your understanding, but are met with criticism or people challenge your authenticity?
So I'm gonna give you, man, this is what happens when I don't have a filter. Listen, the thing that about challenges is this. Since we know we have to be uncomfortable, your ability to change and grow is gonna make some other people uncomfortable. And you're right, they're not gonna like it. So they are gonna challenge it. Nobody messes. This is what I say, real talk. This is what I say when I'm doing therapy. To my folks who are in addiction, in active addiction and recovering, nobody cared about you when you were sitting in the corner in the gutter, right? With a needle in your arm and doing this and that. Nobody cared because you were already at the bottom. Nobody's worried about the person on the bottom because they're already down in the cellar. But when you start making waves, when you start making changes, people are going to notice and be like, oh, hold on a second. No. Don't move too fast. And they're going to try to challenge you. That's just confirmation you're on the right track. See, the challenges are confirmation that you just did something that somebody noticed. They were used to you doing this, and they are going to get pushback. Do not expect that there will be no pushback. This is not easy. And we're going to see this now. I'm glad. That gives me a great segue. Am I allowed to continue, Leonis?
Yes, you can.
Listen, we're going to be met with challenges. And here's what we need to realize. This pain runs deep, right? So we're going to move from realization to action. As you make changes, as you walk through these stages of change, as you move through this continuum that is cultural competency and the awareness of your biases, this is not new. Listen, George Floyd was not the first Black man to die. He was just the first one to die that we actually put all this media attention to, right? We forgot about Emmett Till. We forgot about some of these other names that we ain't never heard, or the men that have continued to die. This runs deep, 60 years since the civil rights era. That's within some of our lifetimes. So we're still struggling with some of the similar things. This is not going to be easy, and this is not going to go away overnight. This runs deep. The definition of insanity, right? We joke about it, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. This is why I love this series here. This is not your typical, we're going to talk about race matters and how we need to address our biases and never give you some tools of what to do. We're taking this for real. We can't do the same thing over and over. We're not going to. Marcella is my daughter, my 14-year-old. And when George Floyd happened, she's 14. She didn't grow up like I did. And she sees what's going on in the news because she's aware. And she's like, Daddy, be careful going out there, because she knows I tend to have a big mouth and I tend to talk out on things. Be careful, Daddy, because they're talking about going after black men, and I'm afraid and I don't want to lose you. That's when it makes it real, right? This runs so deep, and it runs deep for a 14-year-old or a 5-year-old who we know are not too young to talk about race, just like it runs deep for a 40, 50, and 60-year-olds. This is not going away anytime soon. There's going to be resistance, but this has been going on for a while. It's time for us within our circles to impact change and do something about it. So what do? What are the action steps that we need to take? Talk to your kids about what it was like for you. Number one, they are going to push back if they're teenagers like mine. Say, here we go with those stories. But guess what? They're listening and they're watching. So talk to them about your experiences and then ask them about theirs. See, I went through as a black man, that 43-year-old black man, I've gone through experiences of profiling, of racism, of prejudice. And when George Floyd happened, man, I was angry, just like a lot of people were. And I asked my daughter, aren't you angry? Doesn't this happen to you? She's like, nope. Her experiences were not mine. She doesn't have the same experiences I do. She lives in Virginia Beach. I grew up in New York. She's a woman, I'm a man, right? She has a very mixed friend group. And so her experiences weren't mine, but we had to come to the same page. Educate yourself on the taught versus the full history of our country, right? Don't just take face value, right? We have to look into issues. We know and we recognize our kids aren't getting the full story on some issues. Anybody who's aware of the Tuskegee experiment knows sometimes the full story is not always given. Sorry if I'm causing waves, but sometimes waves need to be caused, right? We need to look into the full history of information. I'm not talking about paranoia. I'm not talking about this sort of community that just starts making up things. We need facts, and we need to look into the factual history and learn more about situations so that we can teach our kids thoroughly. When your children have projects, encourage them to choose topics of a marginalized population. Challenge them. Don't stay in your comfort zone. Change will not happen in comfort. Tell them to go out a little bit. And yeah, they're going to push back, but guess what? If you got kids like I got kids, they already got attitude. They want to push back anyway. So might as well make it worth it. Make them learn something different. And then see color. Acknowledge that there's a difference. I don't want you to say, well, I don't see your color, Salo. I want you to see my color because I'm a beautiful chocolate brother. And I want you to acknowledge that there's a difference here and recognize that sometimes your privilege was just your privilege and you can use that in a healthy way. How do you do that, Salo? Glad you asked. See, we got to recognize privilege wasn't something that you wanted, right? You didn't choose it, but it's yours. Accept it. You got privilege, right? When we look at this team that we have here, even in the strategic planning department here, right? And this FACE team, we know that there's a white woman on this team. We know there's 2 black women on this team, and they work well together because they acknowledge that they have different perspectives on some similar topics and that they're willing to use and leverage their skills and their privilege. I got no problem with that. So accept that you got privilege. Identify the privilege, right? And privilege can confront privilege. The reason we see a lot of societal tension is because we see some who are marginalized and less than or feel less than challenging a dominant culture that doesn't believe they got anything wrong. And so when you got somebody who's talking to you, this is like your kids challenging you on something, right? I dare your 8-year-old to step up to you, or better yet, your 13-year-old, because what I say is he's got one chest hair and he says, I'm the man of this house. Let me see how that goes over. Only privilege can confront privilege, and your kids ain't privileged enough to challenge your status because you're the parent. Don't do that to me. That will not work. Pair it. Take your privilege and pair it and connect it with somebody who doesn't have it. So you can teach your little 13-year-old, you can teach your kids how to learn how to use some of these things because they don't have it yet, but you can teach them what it's like and you can open some doors for them, but pair it with somebody who doesn't. Pair your privilege with a marginalized culture, with an underserved culture that may need that privilege so that they can work and you work together. And then share it. Look for healthy opportunities. Don't just pair it with those right around you, but look for ways that you know your privilege can benefit another population. And this is an opportunity that may not have been used before. You have a power, use it. I am not mad at you for using that. You've got a privilege. I've got a privilege right now. I'm on a webinar where you guys are silent. You better believe I got a privilege to talk and you don't. I got plenty of opinions. And some of you guys that are out there got very strong opinions like mine. But I'm gonna use my privilege and I'm gonna pair it with yours and your experiences and your opportunities. And I'm gonna share what I've learned. And we're gonna work together to make a better community. That's how we tackle the parental biases and the adult biases that we have, is that we pair it together. So Albert Einstein said, those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. If you don't know, now you know. That's why Biggie said it. So let's look at this other realization. This isn't going away anytime soon. Not only does this run deep, but this ain't going away. This does not change because there was a new swearing in and inauguration yesterday. This does not change because it's 2021 versus 2020. This does not change because I'm in Virginia Beach and not in New York. Duke University found that 45% of all our daily behaviors are automatic. And that habits that are rooted in the basal ganglia in your brain are so strong that you can have a traumatic brain injury, a severe brain damage incident, and it will still hold true. These things don't go away overnight. So we have to take active steps. Evaluate your biases. Look at them. Do you have the willingness, the guts, call it something else, to look at them, write them down, and reflect on them? Maybe this is something you share, maybe it's something you don't, but you have to stop and look at some of the biases you have. Go back to that slide where we looked at that young man and say, man, this is what I see and I've recognized that, and write that down. And then let that look at you for a little bit. See, sometimes when we write things down, we have to look at it. When it stays in our head, it just stays swimming around with all the other crazy things in our head. But when we write it down, now we're faced with it. So write it down and reflect on their origin so that you can cut it at the root of where it's caused. You've got to do the work on this. Participate in the bias inventory that Harvard puts out. That's just one example. Pause and process when you find yourself in a situation that you find you some judgment. Pause. Just stop for a minute and think about this. Now, we're not telling you to be naive. We're not telling you to be unsafe, but we're telling you to challenge some of the unforeseen or unreasonable beliefs you have and build tolerance by researching the opinions that contradict your own. Allow yourself to listen to somebody different than you. Invite them to lunch. Just listen. Listen to their experience. You want to call me? Let's set up a lunch. I don't mind doing it. Let's talk. Diversify your social network. Do you model the value of your culturally diverse relationships? Or do you have a very, very bland, typical birds of a feather type of relationship in all circles? Allow yourself to have relationships that are different. Be aware of your reaction when your kids ask to play and hang out with and even dress up like somebody different. Race, culture, gender, ability. What do you do? We had a funny conversation. What do you do when your young 13-year-old boy says, hey, when I go into high school, I'm going to take up fashion design? Well, that might be cool because that's the culture now in 2021. But I heard from some Black families, you ain't doing that in my Black family. I'm a Latin male. I'm the only boy of my group. I got 3 sisters, me and my dad. You talk about Latins and a culture that is very machismo and the whole sort of strong man thing. My dad didn't go into fashion design because somebody in New York, when he was an immigrant, he was real good in high fashion. That's how I got all this charm, right? Said that he was gay. And he's like, nope, I can't do it. See, he chose the cultural view rather than challenging and saying, this is what I love. So what do you do? How do you react? Are you willing to have these conversations? I say tackle them on directly. If you don't know how to, find somebody in your circle that is willing to, that you trust, that you can have these conversations together, but we have to have the conversations. And the third realization is this. We have to realize we leave a legacy. We leave an impact. You may not recognize, and you may not even want to accept that you leave an impact, but your voice can be used to call out injustice. Where? How? I don't have a strong enough voice. You got a strong enough voice for the young ones that are in your home or in your family. We have to call it out when we see it because they're watching. Remember, you saw that spectrum of children that are watching and learning about race just by looking at who looks like their caregivers and trying to associate based on who their caregivers are. You have a voice. Your ability to stand up leaves a legacy of strength. It doesn't matter if you were defeated. The fact that you were willing to even stand gives them an opportunity to stand. My daughter had ACL surgery last Friday. Both her parents have had knee surgeries. So yeah, she's scared. Yeah, she's 14, but she knows her mom went through the same surgery. She knows her dad had a knee surgery and went through the rehab, and she saw what we did. And she was paying attention. My ability to stand and walk through difficult times, and there were some failures in there, left an impact, left a legacy for her about strength. If they could do it, Yo, I can do it. And that's my daughter's attitude. And I'm so proud of her because she's taken the challenge. Marianne Williamson wrote a poem. It's in Coach Carter, it's in Aquila and the Bee, 2 movies, but it's a great poem, right? Our deepest fear. And our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. If you really looked at some of the things that you could do, some of the biases we hold to are weak and we're stronger than we realize. That your strength then encourages others to stand up. Read that poem and let that be the motto to take some of these action steps. Be aware of your behaviors and your language. Know that they're listening. Our kids are always learning from us. Do you lock the doors when somebody's coming? What are the conversations you have? You may think they're dismissive conversations or they're adult conversations. Y'all leave the room or go over there. That just makes them want to listen more. Come on, you know. How do you react to the inauguration, to the things going on in society? I'm not saying you can't be natural, but you understand that it's going to leave an impact. Examine the biases that exist within the family that you have and the values you have, the pride, the traditions. Are they worth keeping? I know that traditions are very, very deeply rooted, but some traditions need to be started anew. And then to appreciate your child's personal journey. Listen, appreciate it. They are on their own journey and they're individuals. So ask them the type of legacy that they want to leave. Let's be real. Some of us ain't going to live that long. Sorry. I'm not going to be here forever. And my kids know I'm leaving an impact on them, but they know too that they will leave an impact. Talk to them about what they think their impact will be. The younger we start with that, the sooner they can start leaving that impact. Have ongoing conversations. You can't just do this once. We're not just doing this once. This is a 4-parter, but there's more conversations. I guarantee you there will be some conversations after we're done at 7:30 or 8 o'clock to say, look, we need to do this more. Embrace the curiosity you have and ask questions. You don't know who to ask? You got a team of women right here and you got me. Ask the questions. Broaden the choices that you have and the options. Affirm the growth that your kids have. They're growing. They're learning. So do that. You learn how to do that. You model it for them. Balance their thinking with the questions in the lectures. Don't just lecture them on what they need to believe. Ask them questions. Find out how they're becoming more and more independent thinkers. It's scary, but it's true. They are independent thinkers. So ask questions, but then give them a lecture every now and then because we're parents and that's what we do. And then coach them on how to respond when they see intolerance. They have to learn how to do it. And is it healthy and is it safe? Listen, here's the key. Here's the bottom line. A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives. We know the name Jackie Robinson. The kids learn about it. Baseball celebrates it every year, right? We talk about these things. But listen, you want your life to be important and matter for something. You're making an impact and you're leaving a legacy just in your own household. Look at the impact it has on the lives in your household and the lives around you, and know that you have the opportunity. You took the opportunity by sitting in this lecture tonight to take step one towards making that impact. Don't stop. Don't stop. We ain't done yet. We ain't done yet. So look, I'm going to tell you this real quick, and then we're going to take on some questions. But I want you to know this ain't the only time that we're talking about these things. This team gave me the opportunity to talk about the fact that we're going to talk about, from a clinical standpoint, me and my team at Life Change Institute, we're going to talk about a minority mental health forum that we're willing to build and bring to your agency, to bring to your family, your community. We want to talk about mental health and substance abuse in the Black and Brown community and what that looks like. Because there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of issues. We see the topics here talking about trauma that has existed in the Black family, why we need mental health care, the role of spirituality, like that question held. These are very strong, deeply held beliefs. And we want to tackle them. We want to address this. And we want to talk about what are the tools the dominant culture is using that we may not like, but guess what? We have to work on the mental health and substance abuse that exists in our communities. So that's just one plug. And I want to tell you this, for those of my participants here who are Chesapeake families, I want you to really get excited about this. Life Change Institute, we started that back in May of 2020, and we committed from day one to really help our communities. And so I wanted to provide a minority scholarship. Why minority scholarship? Because I have privilege and I wanted to pair it with somebody who may not have it. And so, yes, it's a company that makes money and I want to take my money and help somebody else. All right. And so we have 2 scholarships this year because we aren't even a year old, but we have $1,000 scholarship open to all Chesapeake Public School seniors. Class of 2021, if you're graduating and you know you may not have a lot of college money, I ain't have none. You have to have a minimum GPA of 2.5, and you got to give me 25 hours of community service. Why? Because we ain't doing this alone, and you're not just taking the money and running. You're going to impact somebody. And I want to look for students who have shown perseverance and growth in their studies, in their work. I want to hear from you either in an essay form or a video form to talk about the struggle that you had and how you overcame it, and how this education is going to continue to help grow to make you do and leave a legacy. I need a letter of support from somebody that says, yo, I believe in this kid. And you have to show a financial need. I'm trying to help people who may not have the money for it, but know that they want a secondary education. Let's go. Let's go. I see the value in that. So if you're interested in this, I pray, I really do welcome, and I pray for my email to blow up. Email me at lifechangeinstitute@gmail for the application. I'll send it right back to you. You got till March 26th to apply. So I really, really hope that you consider this. I really hope that this speaks to somebody in our younger generation that says, look, I can do this and I can make some changes, because we want to be a part of that change. I'm thankful for you guys being here, and I'm thankful that you stayed this long, and I want to hear back from you. So are there some questions, and can we get into some question and answer, Eunice and Lisa?
Yes.
Is there something we can do?
Yes. So, what suggestions would you give a teenager who tries to help a friend or family member address a harmful racial bias, whether they're conscious or not?
We talk a lot and we hear the statement, that's a really good question, but we say it, I use it, learning is more caught than taught. So we want to model this. You have a friend, a real close friend that holds our bias and they're not willing to listen to the words you say, behavior will always win over words. And this is funny for communication, when there's an incongruency, when they don't match up, when the verbal doesn't match the behavior, behavior will always win. Model to them what it looks like. Choose to be different and uncomfortable and go sit with somebody of a different race. Choose to talk to somebody and actively do that in front of this person and model it to them. And when they step to you, say, yo, why are you doing that? Because I'm modeling what is healthy and I'm showing you that it's worth it. And you're still my boy or you're still my girl, but I'm going to model it to you. Good question.
Okay, well, how do you handle cultural stereotypes that people believe and they have the data to support it?
Ooh. I'm glad you're asking 43-year-old Salo versus 23-year-old Salo, because back in the day, I said, well, you hold the stereotype, I'm going to make you scared. And so back in the day when I had hair and I wasn't as good looking, more pimply faced, I would wear the bigger clothes and make people scared because people are already scared of young Black men. But what I saw is that I wanted to show them something different. You may perceive something, but wait till I open my mouth and wait till you see. So there's data to support that those people are dangerous, or we should be scared of this. But guess what? Data can be used. Anybody who studies statistics know we can make statistics say whatever we want it to say, right? So the numbers are the numbers, true, but what's your experience, right? And if we take it on the stages of change continuum, if the number is so small about the possibilities or the opportunity, I just look at that as an opportunity, as a better challenge. Because guess what, man, if I make it in that small window, I'm a bad man. So the data may be there, but it may not be accurate. What do you feel in your heart is necessary? Challenge it.
Okay. As a brown-skinned Dominican man, what are some of the biases you have had to deal with in your own culture?
In my own culture, one of the things, wow, that's a really good question, man. Anybody who knows me from history is gonna know this is gonna be scary. So I moved to Virginia Beach back in the 90s and left New York. My family stayed in New York. And then I married outside my race, right? And then I did all these things, right? And they're saying, well, you're no longer New Yorker or Dominican. You're not true to this. And I have to face that just within my own family and my own circles. I understand it. I'm not saying they're accurate. I know what I chose and I know what I needed to do and what I stand behind. So I faced those things. And I think that's a really, really good question, because we have to be willing as leaders to answer some of these same questions, right? So I have been to stores where they follow me around. I have been followed in my own community. You'll see it on my Facebook page if anybody's friends with me, right? I've been followed in my own community in $500,000 homes and followed by police. I have been detained because I fit the description. And these were as an adult. This isn't just 20 years ago or something else. right? You're right. I am darker than most. I am bigger. I've been, and I'll give you this one last one real quick. I was looked at in a college situation. I was mentoring a therapist. She said, come to my classroom and speak on your profession because you're the best at what you do. And I am, right? So I went, but it was the same day that my daughters were having a race. I forgot what, 5K or something. And I was dressed in leggings and shorts and a sweatshirt. But since I wasn't dressed in a shirt and tie for this man's class, I walked in, popped my head in and said, hey, good morning. I just want to let you know I'm here. And he gave me the up and down. And he kept lecturing for another 45 minutes. I knew I was on the clock. I knew I had to go. I was like, okay. And so this other guy came in, dressed to the nines. Good dude. I'm not going to down him. He talked a whole lot about nothing for about 48 minutes. And I spoke for 7 minutes. I had been there an hour already, hour and a half. And I walked away because I needed to go to my race with my daughter. And I had more than one kid literally interrupt the class and chase me down the hallway, say, man, we were waiting for that. Why didn't you speak first? Because I'm going to show you, I know what I got. There's a confidence in what I've got. And I don't need to flex on other people. I know what I got and I know who I am. And I know, and I will walk in that swagger that says I'm confident and share it with those who are willing to listen. Walk confidently and surround yourself with others who will walk confidently too.
If our kids have the privilege and access to social media, what things can we do to encourage them to use those avenues to deliver words of encouragement and break down the barriers of bias and racial distress and use it for good?
Mm. Yeah, this speaks to something that I educate a lot of therapists on, and that we recognize from a mental health standpoint as the development stages of development, right? What we call Erik Erikson's stages of growth and development. I got a 14-year-old and 11-year-old who are obsessed with social media and obsessed with their social influence, just like every kid would, and we were. So since that is the case, we have to let them have their own sense of ownership and opportunity and belonging of their thing. Maybe you come alongside them and you say, hey, what can we do together? Right? So if they have a TikTok, my kids have a TikTok, and then they laughed at me when I told them and I started this company. I was encouraged to start a TikTok. They're like, Daddy, you're going to start a TikTok? But I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to make a TikTok. So my 11-year-old is my TikTok manager. She loves making TikToks. And so we do this together because she has her own. She's very artsy. She's very creative. She's got her own world. That's hers. But she also has this outlet. And eventually she will see where they merge together because both of them are her voice. Can you give your kid a voice that you partner up with them together? If you have social media, let them have theirs and they'll create something together. I think that's a great opportunity.
Okay. When you walk into a public high school, what would you be hoping to see or not see that would give you a feeling of inclusion in an anti-racist community?
Ooh, man, that's some good question. That's a really good one. I think that some of the things that really challenge, and I'm going to speak frankly to this, I pray that the language that I hear, right? We talk a lot in Black and Brown communities about the N-word and how we've kind of taken that on and said that this is our word, but it was used to really, really impact hurt and fear, right? But I want to hear that there's an encouragement and not an attempt to take something that was so hurtful, like that word or anything else, any sort of action or behavior, and that we could really foster some sort of encouragement. I want to see the real popular, quarterback coming alongside the special ed kid that has trouble walking down the hallway and helping them out rather than joking them. I want to hear that the language that we're using is meant to encourage and foster, not just try to adopt and change. But I want to see that there's some encouragement and growth. And I want to see those explicit acts, not just the implicit. So I want to see that, not by and large, but if it exists and I see it by those that are dominant, those that have influence, I know that it'll trickle down to others. So that's what I'm hoping for. And I want to see that if I'm a new face and I walk into a high school, number one, you're going to be like, what's your old butt doing there? And you're going to come and you're going to talk to me. And you're going to find out, what are you doing here? And you're going to ask questions. If you own your high school, if you own your area, and there's somebody new there, you might want to find out who they are and what they're about. Because I'm not going to let you take over my spot. I want to find out who you are. And so I want to see that you're willing to approach and be bold. You may mess up, you may trip over your feet, but at least you approached. That's what I would want to see.
Well, thank you. I'm going to turn it back to Lisa.
Stella, could you put your contact information up for us?
Yes, thank you, Elaine. I completely forgot about that because I got carried away. Listen, speaking of the social media and all that, you can reach out to me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. I think those are the emblems there, right? Life Change Institute is for all of them. My number is on there. I always tell everybody text me first because I still owe some people money, and so I may not answer your number if I don't have it saved. But it's okay. I'm a real person, right? I want you to reach out if you have questions. I want you to really take the time to explore. Don't just take my word for it. I want you to do your research. Research me. I don't mind. I know it's there. I know Google's there. I know you're going to look at my Facebook later. I'm not hurt. I'm not bothered by it because I'm not ashamed of who I am now. I'm not ashamed of where I came from. Research and see if this is legit. See if it's consistent. Are there any other questions or thoughts or comments or feedback from anybody? Because I would love to really engage in some of those if there is, either Lisa, Eunice, or Elena.
I personally think you've given us a lot to soak in tonight. So I think you gave us a homework assignment, and it looks like we've got about 15 minutes to start writing down our list of the things we need to challenge and confront. So thank you so much for imparting the psychological underpinnings of bias and the change process and cultural competency, and also outlining just some very practical things we can do as parents. And we've got comments coming in. Thank you for being honest and real. Thank you for being insightful. So I think I will tell you, you've held your audience, sir, throughout the duration of this webinar. And we hope to have future opportunities to collaborate with you. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa so that she can, again, just kind of highlight. I'll pull up that PowerPoint for us. She can highlight the series that we have coming up. So
can I say this to Elena real quick? I'm sorry, real quick. I got to give a shout out to you guys because I'll tell you, there's an opportunity to be bold here, and I'm impressed. And I'll say that in front of the participants we have, for a school system to want to tackle something head on. And I know what I bring to the table when I bring some strong words, and that they're willing to unashamedly take that on. Much respect. And so I want to give that encouragement to you and your team, Elena, Eunice and Lisa. You guys are doing an amazing job, and please don't stop. Because again, there's going to be a challenge. You're going to get an email or two or a phone call. Somebody's supervisor is going to get something, and I don't care. That just means you did something right because you rubbed them the wrong way, and challenge them to think about something. Keep going. Keep going. Don't be afraid of the challenge. So thank you for the opportunity.
Talking about keep going, I will tell you that I already have a principal texting me saying I need him to come to my building. So I do not think that this is going to be the end of the beginning, sir. So thank you.
Let's go. I'm ready. Thank you guys so much, and keep doing it.
I got another one as well.
You have one as well. Awesome.
Hey, listen, I'm ready to quit my day job. So if y'all got me on the road, let's go. Let's do it. I want to impact change, so let's do it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Salo. Elena, do you mind going to the next slide, please?
Sure.
And just want to say that I hope everyone gained a lot of powerful information. Remember, as Salo stated, remember to accept it, identify it, pair it, and share it. Let your voice be the call to call out injustice and inequality. So again, Salo has said his number. He's given us his number. If you have any questions, you can reach out to him.